My name is Lena. I'm 41 years old, recently in remission after a year of treatment that changed everything about how I see the world and the people in it. I remember standing in the back of that ballroom, blending in with the crowd as the newlyweds danced under fairy lights and laughter. The music was soft, the kind that pretends joy is simple. I watched her, Kayla, glide across the floor in white, all eyes on her. But she never once looked toward the back, not even a glance. No, one knew who I was. There were no photos of us together on her memory wall. No mention of the friend who'd been by her side since high school. She didn't speak my name once in her vows or her thank you speech. That was when it hit me. I hadn't lost my best friend to a man or to distance. I'd lost her to silence, and she wanted it that way. Kayla and I met in 10th grade at a school, assembly where we were both hiding from different things. She was avoiding her ex-boyfriend and a crowd of gossiping girls. I was avoiding the math quiz I hadn't studied for. We ended up sitting next to each other in the far back row, passing sarcastic comments about the principal's inspirational speech. I remember thinking, finally, someone else who doesn't buy into this fake cheeriness. From that day on, we were inseparable. We didn't have identical lives, far from it. But we seemed to orbit the same emotional wavelength. Where I was quiet and observant, Kayla was outspoken and magnetic. But somehow her loudness never drowned me out. She saw me even when others didn't. And in a way, I think I saw her too, especially the parts she hid under her confidence. Kayla came from a well-off family that cared more about appearances than substance. Her mother ran charity galas and Instagrammed flower arrangements. Her father treated family dinners like board meetings. They expected performance, perfection, and polish. Kayla always joked that she was raised by a team of stylists, not parents. My world was quieter. My parents were both teachers, hardworking, practical people who believed in decency over display. We didn't take elaborate vacations or wear designer clothes, but we laughed. We cooked meals together. My mother gave long, thoughtful hugs. My father patched up leaky pipes and taught me how to file taxes before I could drive. Kayla loved coming over. She said our house felt real. She spent holidays with us when her parents traveled or argued. I still remember the Christmas Eve she fell asleep on our couch in one of my dad's oversized flannel shirts. She cried when she opened her stocking the next morning, not because of what was inside, but because she'd never had one with her name on it before. Over the years, we carried each other through everything. She was there when my first boyfriend dumped me by text. I was there when she found out her fiancé had cheated on her during his bachelor party in Miami. She moved into my apartment that night without asking, toothbrush in hand, mascara streaked across her cheeks. We spent that weekend binge-watching old sitcoms, eating cereal for dinner, and deleting every photo of him off her phone. When she finally slept, I stayed up organizing her bills and helping her break the lease on the condo they were supposed to share. That was our dynamic. I was the planner, the fixer, the calm voice during her chaos. She called me her lighthouse, more than once. And maybe that's how I saw myself too. Solid, steady, always shining even when storms rolled through. I didn't mind being the helper. It wasn't about keeping score. I just believed in showing up. That's how I was raised. And I thought Kayla believed in that too. So when I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, I didn't even question whether she'd be by my side. I remember texting her from the parking lot of the clinic, hands still shaking. She responded, within minutes, "I'm coming over." She brought soup, a ridiculous plush blanket shaped like a tortilla, and a stack of trashy magazines. We sat on my couch, laughing at celebrity gossip, and I told myself, this is how we'll get through. But the next time I had chemo, she didn't come. She texted, "Work emergency, I'm so sorry, I'll make it up to you." And the time after that, she forgot entirely. When I followed up, she said, I didn't know it was today. Then the calls got shorter. The visits are fewer. Her texts turned from thoughtful check-ins to emoji hearts or thinking of you. Messages with no follow-up. She missed the day I shaved my head. Missed the morning I collapsed in the shower from exhaustion. Missed the weekend I ended up in the ER with an infection. I made excuses for her. Told myself she was busy, overwhelmed, scared. Other friends said the same. Not everyone knows how to handle sickness. Maybe it's too hard for her emotionally. Some people just don't do well with hospitals. But I wasn't asking her to be perfect. I just needed her to show up, the way I always had for her. Then came the silence. She stopped responding to my updates, skipped the small celebration I had with a few friends after my final treatment. No message, no explanation. I thought maybe something had happened. Maybe she was going through something she hadn't shared. I still cared about her, even through the hurt. So I reached out again, gently, asking if she was okay. No response. A few weeks later, I found out about her engagement through someone else entirely, an old college acquaintance who sent me a congratulatory group text by mistake. My name had been in her contact list from some past event. I blinked. At the screen for a long time. I hadn't even known she was dating anyone. I scrolled through Kayla's public Instagram, the curated feed of her life. There were smiling photos of her and her fiancé at vineyards, brunches, and beach sunsets. All recent. All posted during the months I was in and out of hospitals. I wasn't angry yet. I was just confused. Hurt in a way I didn't know how to name. It was one thing to drift apart over time. It was another to be deliberately excluded, erased. Still, I didn't confront her. I told myself maybe I'd hear from her before the wedding. Maybe she was waiting to explain. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear it. Then, months later, I received a wedding registry link. No note, no message, just a digital link, forwarded by a friend who said, "Did you know about this?" That was the moment I stopped hoping. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Kayla hadn't just forgotten me. She had removed me, edited me out of the story of her life, and I was finally starting to feel what it meant to let someone go, without chasing after them. It had been over 6 months since I'd last heard Kayla's voice. The silence between us had grown into something that hummed beneath everything. Every cup of tea, every quiet Sunday, every hospital follow-up. I didn't know whether to call it absence or abandonment. Maybe it was both. Then, one Tuesday morning, I opened an email from a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, someone from a book club Kayla and I had briefly joined together. The subject line read, "Are you going?" with a smiling emoji and a forwarded attachment. I clicked on it, expecting maybe a reunion, a fundraiser, something light. Instead, it was Kayla's wedding invitation, a digital copy. No note, no personal message. Just an automatically generated invite from a service I didn't recognize, listing the venue, time, and RSVP link. At first, I just stared at it, the kind of stare where your mind disconnects and your body goes still. I thought, maybe this was sent by mistake. Maybe she meant to send it with a note and forgot. Maybe... But there was no maybe left to stretch. The truth was in the silence that followed. Not a single message came after it. I didn't reply. I didn't RSVP. I closed the laptop and went for a walk, trying to understand what I was feeling. Betrayal didn't feel like the right word, too sharp, too pointed. This was quieter, more hollow. It felt like being erased. Over the next few weeks, I kept telling myself I wouldn't think about it, but my brain did anyway. I'd known about every one of Kayla's relationships, who she liked, who her mother disapproved of, who was just a rebound. But this man? I hadn't even heard his name. I didn't recognize him in the photos either. He looked familiar in the way real estate agents look familiar. Clean cut, well-dressed, surface-friendly. His arm around Kayla was confident, his smile rehearsed. And she looked like someone I didn't know anymore. Hair sleeked back, smile polished, captions quoting wedding influencers. Then, exactly a month before the wedding, I received another email. This time it was a group message. Kayla's wedding? Registry. I hadn't spoken to her in over half a year. I hadn't met her fiancé. I hadn't even been told, woman to woman, friend to friend, that she was getting married. And yet, here I was, still on her email list, invited to buy her towels and monogrammed wine glasses. I clicked through the registry slowly. There were categories labeled "For Our Forever Home" and "Things We Love to Do Together." Each item had a comment. One for a cookbook. He loves my pancakes. One for wine tumblers. Reminds us of Napa. I sat there, stunned. Not at the items, but there was a feeling that this was the new Kayla. Someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had no place for me in her life. Not even a line in a caption. Not even a footnote. I checked her Instagram again. There was nothing. No photos of us. Not from our college days. Not from the birthday trips we took together. Not even a photo from the weekend she moved in with me after her fiancé left. Everything had been removed. It was subtle, but complete. Like cleaning out a room so thoroughly it's like no one ever lived there. There had been a photo we took in my backyard during my remission celebration, just the two of us under string lights, arms around each other, smiling through tired eyes. I remembered posting it myself, with a caption that said, "Some people are just oxygen." She had commented with a heart emoji and the word "always." It was gone now. Both the post and the memory it marked vanished from her feed. I searched through tags, mentions, old hashtags. Nothing. I even checked mutual friends' pages and slowly realized Kayla had edited her digital life, and I was no longer in the edit. That was the moment it hit me. She hadn't just moved on. She had written a new story, and I wasn't in it. The week of the wedding, I had an oncology follow-up. Routine labs, quick check-in. The nurse on duty was someone I liked. Kind, sharp, and a little nosy in the way that made me feel human. We chatted as she prepped my IV. Then she paused and said, "Oh, random question. Do you know Kayla Rowan? I think she mentioned you once." I nodded slowly. "Yeah. Why?" She laughed softly, the kind of laugh people make when something doesn't quite sit right. "Well, I was at her bridal shower, my cousin's friends, with her now. Weird small world thing. Anyway, they did this cute speech thing, and I thought she'd mention you. You were in all her college stories, but she didn't. I just thought it was odd. Weren't you her maid of honor or something?" I smiled. I don't know why. Maybe because that's what we do when we're trying not to cry in public. That evening, I sat on my couch for a long time, holding a mug of tea that had gone cold. The apartment was quiet. Outside, I could hear the wind moving leaves along the sidewalk. It was that kind of silence that settles into your chest and stays there. I thought about how much of myself I had given her over the years. My time, my home, my loyalty. I thought about the secrets I had kept, the times I had driven across town in the middle of the night because she didn't want to be alone. I thought about how often I had downplayed my own needs to make space for hers. And then I thought about that email, the one with her registry, and the one before it, with the digital invitation that didn't even have my name in the greeting. That night, I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just knew. I was done waiting for an explanation that would never come. I was done letting someone else decide whether I was worthy of remembering. I made my decision quietly, the kind that lives in your spine, not your voice. I was going to the wedding, not to interrupt, not to reclaim anything she took. I would go, not as a guest, but as a witness. Not for her, for me. Because sometimes, the only way to truly close a Door is to walk through it one last time and leave, knowing you don't need to knock again. When we were 26, Kayla showed up at my door in the middle of a thunderstorm. She was soaked through, her mascara smudged, suitcase dragging behind her like it was too heavy for one person. Her mother had kicked her out again. This time it was over a breakup she hadn't orchestrated properly, according to her family. Apparently, grieving wasn't allowed to look messy. Her mother had told her, word for word, "You're embarrassing yourself." I opened the door, took one look at her, and stepped aside. No questions, no hesitation. She walked in and dropped the suitcase by the door. She didn't say anything, not even a thank you. Just went straight to my couch and curled up under the throw blanket I always kept folded at the end. She stayed for 3 months. In that time, we slipped into something close to a rhythm. She cried a lot in the beginning, quietly, in the mornings, usually in the shower. I'd hear the water run longer than necessary. I never said anything about it. I just made coffee and left it waiting for her on the counter. She always drank it. We spent evenings cooking the kind of comfort food that required no recipes. Pasta, grilled cheese, frozen waffles for dinner. Food that felt like childhood, like pause. And one night, toward the end of that 3rd month, we sat out in the backyard under string lights I'd hung up for no particular reason. I remember the way the light caught her face. Tired, but softer. More real than I'd seen her in years. She looked at me and said, "I don't know who else would have done this." I shrugged. "You don't have to thank me." She shook her head. "No, I do. Because you're the only person who loves me without conditions." Then she said something I've never forgotten. "Nothing can break this. We're the real thing. Everyone else fades, but not us." We clinked our mugs, mine filled with cheap wine, hers with hot cocoa, and just sat in the quiet. There was no music, no phones, just the hum of neighborhood sprinklers and the faint rustle of wind. In hindsight, I see that moment for what it was. The high point. The last time things felt equal. Safe. A few years later, her father had a stroke. I was already in a relationship then, one I was trying hard to make work. But when Kayla called me from the hospital in tears, I dropped everything. My boyfriend at the time, Mark, was irritated. He thought I should let someone else handle it. He even said, "It's not like you're her family." But that was the thing. I was. Or at least I thought I was. I stayed at the hospital all night with her, holding her hand through his surgery, fetching nurses when she panicked, running to the vending machine when her stomach finally asked for food. I held her when she sobbed, quietly in the stairwell after the doctor said complications. Mark and I broke up not long after that. He said I was too emotionally involved in other people's lives. I didn't argue. Some things aren't worth explaining to people who only understand boundaries in terms of distance, not care. And then there was the engagement Kayla called off, her second. He'd proposed in Paris, something she always said was a dream of hers. The photos looked perfect, Eiffel Tower, sunset, champagne. But she called me 2 weeks later, her voice hollow. She said, "I can't do it. I lied too much." I asked what she meant, and she confessed she'd hidden things from him. Financial things, past relationships, even her real age. She laughed when she told me, but it was that brittle kind of laugh that knows what it's masking. She was afraid. He'd love the version she created, but not the real her. I told her the truth. That honesty comes out eventually, one way or another. That if she couldn't show him who she really was, maybe he wasn't the one. She nodded, but I could tell it stung. Still, I kept her secrets. All of them. Even when mutual friends asked what happened, I kept quiet. I never said, "She lied." I said, "It wasn't the right fit." I let her walk away from that story, untarnished, because I knew how much she hated being seen as flawed. I thought I was protecting her. But now, with the wedding days away and my name scraped off the map of her life, I wondered how many other people she'd edited out. How many moments we'd shared that she now pretended had belonged to someone else, or to no one at all. The memories started returning like flickers. Her curled up on my couch in that oversized hoodie she refused to give back. The voice memos she used to send me when she was too anxious to talk. The way she used to introduce me at parties. "This is Lena, my forever person. No offense to husbands." She said that more than once, and maybe that's what made this so painful. Because I hadn't just lost a friend. I'd lost a piece of identity I didn't know I'd woven into someone else. I had loved her without asking for balance, without needing to be praised for it. But I hadn't expected to be deleted. I think that's the part no one prepares you for. The quiet rewrite. When someone you love decides your role in their story is over, and they don't even bother to give you the script before they cut the scene. The wedding wasn't the betrayal, not really. It was just the moment that revealed what had already happened long ago, that she had been letting go of me in pieces. And I hadn't seen it. I didn't rush the decision. I sat with it for a few days, thought about what it meant to go, what it meant not to. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't looking to hurt her. But there was something in me, something quiet and firm, that said, go. Not for her. For you. So I did. The night before the wedding, I took out a box I hadn't opened. In years. Inside were photos, real ones printed from the time before everything lived in phones. There were sticky notes with Kayla's handwriting, birthday cards she'd made for me when we couldn't afford store-bought ones, even a worn keychain she gave me the day I got my first job out of college. It said, "Take the world. I've got your back." I sat with those things for a long time. Then I chose a card, one that she had drawn by hand when she stayed at my place after her first breakup. On the front, she'd doodled two cartoon girls holding hands in a thunderstorm with the caption, "Sisters, even in the rain." I flipped it over and began to write on the blank inside. "I held your hair in your darkest moments. I held my tongue in your cruelest. I held on even when you stopped reaching back. I was never invisible, Kayla. You just stopped looking. I release you now, but not without saying goodbye, even if you can't. No signature." She would know who it was from. The morning of the wedding, I got dressed in the calmest way I knew how. I didn't wear black or anything bold. I chose a simple slate blue dress, tailored, elegant, understated. The same one Kayla once pulled from a rack and insisted I buy, saying, "This makes you look like someone who owns the room without trying." I remember smiling at the irony. I arrived late enough to miss the ceremony. That wasn't what I came for. It was the reception, the stage Kayla had built to show her life to the world, that I wanted to see with my own eyes. The venue was a converted vineyard on the outskirts of town, the kind with sprawling green lawns and white wooden beams. Everything looked like it had been filtered through warm light, polished and perfect. I parked far from the entrance and walked slowly. I didn't check my reflection before going in. I didn't need to. This wasn't about appearances. Inside, the reception was already in full swing. Music, clinking glasses, laughter echoing off chandeliers. I stepped into the space quietly, unnoticed at first, and scanned the room. There were photos strung up on twine, Kayla and her husband on vacation, baby pictures of them both, college days with mutual friends I vaguely remembered, but none of me. I didn't expect it. But seeing the timeline laid out like that, so carefully curated, so thoroughly edited, brought a strange calm. It confirmed what I'd already known. I was a ghost in this version of her life. I walked to the gift table near the back, placed the envelope under a stack of glittery cards, and stepped away without hesitation. Then I just stood, observing, not hiding, but not making a scene. No one recognized me. Some looked my way and then looked past. I was just another guest to them, maybe a colleague, a +1. I let them think what they wanted, and then she saw me. It was mid-toast. Her back was partially turned, laughing at something someone had said. And then her eyes swept the room and landed on me. The moment froze. For the first time in over a year, our eyes locked. I didn't move. I didn't offer a smile. I just stood still. Present. Kayla's face shifted, quickly. Confusion, then surprise and something close to panic. I didn't flinch. I gave her a single steady nod, not a greeting, a goodbye, and then I turned, walked toward the exit without looking back. No dramatics, no lingering. As I passed the outer hallway, I caught a snippet of conversation from a group of women near the Siam door. One asked Kayla who I was. There was a pause. Too long to be casual. Kayla stammered something. I didn't catch the words. Maybe she gave a name. Maybe she didn't. But her voice sounded like someone trying to rewrite a line she hadn't prepared for. I kept walking. Outside, the evening was settling into gold and pink hues. The air smelled of vineyard grapes and celebration. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt still, like something that had been tangled inside me for years had finally been put down. I sat in my car for a few minutes before starting the engine. My phone buzzed once, an old friend texting about dinner next week. I smiled and replied. As I pulled away from the venue, I saw through the open doors the MC announcing another toast. The mic crackled slightly, and, "Now," he said, a few words from Kayla's oldest and dearest friend. He mispronounced the name. It wasn't mine. Kayla corrected him with a forced laugh, her voice echoing faintly out into the parking lot. And all I could think was, I was her oldest and dearest once, but not anymore. And that's okay, because sometimes justice doesn't come in confrontation. Sometimes it's not a reckoning, it's a release. Not being seen was never the wound. Believing I had to fight for visibility was, and that night, walking away without being named, I realized I didn't need to be in the story anymore. I had my own, and I was finally ready to live it. I didn't hear from Kayla after the wedding. Not a call. Not a message. Not even a silent reaction to the letter I left behind. And truthfully, I didn't expect to. There was no scene, no confrontation. Just space. And that space held more truth than any conversation could have. At first, it felt strange, not to be waiting for her to respond. For years, even when we weren't speaking, part of me held on to the idea that someday she'd reach out. That we'd sit down in some coffee shop and she'd say the right words, and it would all make sense again. But after the wedding, I stopped checking my phone for her name. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because I had finally accepted she wasn't coming back in the way I needed her to, and that had to be enough. A month passed. I'd been journaling more, something I started doing during chemo when the nights were long and sleep didn't come easily. It helped. Not just to process the pain, but to map out who I was becoming on the other side of it. One night, I posted a message in a local women's group, just asking if anyone else wanted to write together. Nothing fancy, just quiet evenings. With tea and paper. I thought maybe 2 or 3 people might respond. 12 women showed up. Some were cancer survivors. Some had lost friends. Others were just tired. Tired of being the strong one. Tired of being invisible. Tired of holding everyone else while no one held them. We started meeting every Thursday night in the back room of a small bookstore downtown. I brought extra notebooks and pens. Someone always brought cookies, and every week we wrote through. The ache. We didn't fix each other. That wasn't the point. We witnessed. We listened. We let each other be seen. In one of those early meetings, I reconnected with someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Mira, an old friend from college who had once gently told me, "You pour into people too deeply who don't know how to hold it." At the time, I'd laughed it off. But now, sitting across from her in a room filled with quiet resilience, I heard the wisdom in those words differently. I wasn't wrong for pouring deeply. I just needed to be more thoughtful about the vessels. This time, Mira didn't just observe. She stayed. She brought meals when I was too tired to cook. She sent handwritten notes instead of texts. She listened without fixing, and slowly, I began to feel what it meant to be held. Not just cared for, but understood. The shift wasn't loud. It happened in small, almost imperceptible ways. I smiled more. I opened the blinds earlier in the morning. I started humming while folding laundry again. At my final oncology appointment, my doctor looked at me, then paused with a gentle squint. "You look different," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Is that a medical observation?" He smiled. "No. It's a human one. You look lighter." And I think he was right, not because everything was perfect, not because the scars had vanished, but because I wasn't carrying everyone else's silence anymore. When I walked out of that hospital, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. The kind of still that comes after the storm, when the ground is soft again and the air tastes like something close to peace. I took the long way home that day, drove past our old favorite coffee shop, past the street where Kayla and I used to sit in my car after bad dates and talk for hours. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I thought about that night in my backyard when she told me, "Nothing can break this. We're the real thing." And maybe, in that moment, we were. Maybe what we had was real, for who we were back then. But not everything that's real is meant to last forever. Some friendships don't end with a fight. They end in slow silence, in missed calls, in parties where your name isn't spoken. That's still grief, but it's a quieter kind, one you learn to carry without apology. The wedding had never been about revenge. It wasn't about being seen. It was about giving myself permission to let go, with dignity, not anger. It was a full stop, and now, for the first time in a long while, I'm writing new sentences, ones that begin with me.